Hey, what's going on there, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Thoughts with Fox. I'm your host. You could call me Fox. Now, I want to get right into today's video because I want to teach you how printing money actually does hurt the poor. Now, I want to say that again, so before I lose you, just hang around. Unfortunately, there's an unintended consequence where printing money, in 2020's case, stimulus, has an unintended consequence where it actually hurts the very people it's intended to help. Now, in order to lay this out, what we need to do is we need to remove the emotional side of things when talking about this. This is how this video will be kind of slightly political, but there's an economic perspective in it as well. So getting back to removing the emotional side, sometimes when people talk about the wealth gap and things along those lines, they'll resort to things about how the minimum wage needs to be raised, we need to pay a living wage, or another one that you might hear is, how can people at the very top, right, those one percenters, how can they own 90+% of everything while the bottom 99% can own so little? So if you get wrapped up in all the emotional in the emotional side of things, you'll lose sight of what this video and its intended purpose, which is to teach you how printing money has some really bad effects. Okay, now you can kind of look at the little background that I chose. I thought it was pretty symbolic because, well, when you print money, especially when you print vast amounts of it over many years, you take away its purchasing power. So numerically, this $100 bill is still gonna say $100, 10, 20, 50 years from now. But what I want to show you is how printing money will make that $100 bill lose its purchasing power. So with what you can buy $100 with today, well, 10 years from now, prices of everything might go up. So that $100 will not hold its value anymore. So we're going to transition to a chart, and it's going to show a little bit more. All right, perfect. So now that we have this chart in front of us, we're going to walk through, and you can see it's titled The Rise and Fall of the US Dollar. So just a slight little bit of history. So in 1913, we created something, this is from the federal government, called the Federal Reserve. And you can see that began, or sort of opened operation, in 1913. And this is something that we still have today. And the Fed's goal is they try to control the rate of inflation, and we can go into the big economic side of inflation in another video. But essentially what the Fed does is they print money. So if you take a look at the chart, you can see 1913. Okay, this illustration does a nice job showing how $100 was worth its true value of $100. And then we started to print money, okay, to try and solve all the problems that people felt that we were having, and that the only way we'd be able to solve it would be to, hey, let's print some money. So you can see what that did to its purchasing power. Now, these pink lines, okay, these resemble recessions that happened throughout the US during this time. So you can really see how we start to print more money when recessions tend to start. And that's because we view that as a quick fix to how we can get money in people's pockets and how we can keep the economy going, so on and so forth. Now, if you look here kind of toward the 1920s, we start really printing money, but the value of it starts going up. So you might be saying, what are we talking about here, Fox? The value's going up. Well, printing money is a short-term fix. So you can see it worked for a short amount of time. Okay, and then you can see right before the Great Depression started, right, that iconic day, the Wall Street crash, all right, start going into overdrive, printing all that money. Now, unfortunately, you can kind of see how it was short-lived, and the US dollar and its intrinsic value starts to taper. Now, this Bretton Woods agreement, what that was, it was an agreement to where the global currency, sort of the global standard, the exchange was in gold, in ounces. So this particular agreement said that now the US dollar is going to be the global currency. So what that enabled us to do was print more money. And then you can really see how the dollar just begins to collapse, just slowly and steady, gradually over time. So this shows how printing money in the long run, how it has the negative effects. Now, what I'm going to show you, if you still don't believe me just yet, is I'm going to show you housing prices next. We're going to look at, I believe it's from 1950 up until 2010. So we're going to transition to that now. What you can see with this chart right here, they have it titled "The Changing Math Behind Homeownership in the U.S." So this does a nice job showing how in the year 1950, the median home value was $7,400. That's insane. If we just take a brief pause from the video, that's insane to think houses were once that cheap, right? Obviously, if you apply today's standards. But now in 2010, you can see how much the median home value increased. Right now we're looking at $221,000, right? Almost $222,000. And that's just 2010. So we'll have to wait and see when they update it, showing what 2020, how it changed then. Now, all the way to the right, you can see household median income. Now, the median income in 1950 was roughly a little under $3,000. And as of 2010, it was hovering just under $50,000. So what we're going to do next is I have a calculator pulled up, and we're going to show how much of a percent the median home value increased over that 60-year period, as well as the income. And we're going to compare. We're going to see if it's the same. I want to do the housing one first. So you can see $7,400 and then the amount returned. Okay, now we're looking at the top price. I just rounded up to $222,000, and you can see I just happened to put the dates in, right, just so it's over a 60-year period, so that way you know that I'm not fudging any of the numbers here. So the prices of a house, okay, went up 2,900%. Okay, 2,900%. So I want you to keep that number in mind. And now I'm going to show the original page that we were showing, and that's going to show how the income increased. Do you think it increased the same? Let's find out. All right, so you can see 29.90, all right, and then 49.5. So I really only rounded up by a slight amount. Same years, 60 years, but it only went up 1,500%. So when people say that wages have not kept up, whether it's with the rate of inflation or with the pricing or the prices of everything else, they are correct. But sometimes what they're incorrect about, because then what they allude to is, well, we need to put more money in the hands of poorer people. And often the policies that they choose to do is printing more money. So you can see how us printing money, it's a short-term fix, but long-term, it just destroys the purchasing power, which in return is going to hurt the very people it's intended to help. So where do we go from here? So I showed how printing money is going to hurt the very people it's intended to help in the long run. And the reason for that is because it destroys the purchasing power. So just I guess another little economic lesson. The reason why the rich continue to get richer when we print more money is because you can see how asset prices, okay, and by asset prices, let's just talk about homes in particular, they go up more than people's income, right? Because although, let's say your income goes up in a numeric value, well, what happens when we print more money? It loses the purchasing power. So really, did you get that much of a raise? So the rich own assets, which is why when we print more money, the asset prices rise. So the rich become richer. And do you think poorer people tend to own assets? I mean, maybe they might own a house, but do they own businesses, right? Are they invested in the markets and things along those lines? So that's the reason why the rich will continue to get richer, and the poor, unfortunately, will get poorer if we continue to print money. So where do we go from here, right? How can we potentially fix this? Well, at first, I think a really good thing that we should do is stop printing all this money, because as we just walked through, we showed how it hurts the very people it's intended to help. You notice how I keep really trying to hammer down and say that. But as far as how we can get more money into the hands of poorer people, well, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go on this journey together, and we're really going to have to figure that out. So if you do think you know of a way that you can get more money in the hands of poor people, I want you to leave a comment below, because I'm really open to having my mind changed. And maybe as time goes on, I'll do a little more research and I can really find some better policies than the ones that we're trying to implement now. But on that note, I'm signing off. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. As always, I ask that if you found the content worthy, I want you to send it to a friend of yours. I want to do my best to try and get some different opinions out there. One last thing, I did create an Instagram account, so if you want to follow it, it's @ThoughtsWithFox, right there on Instagram, and that way you can share these videos just a little bit easier if you choose to do so. Again, appreciate you watching the video. I hope to see you again sometime soon.